Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar session. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation today, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have, and we will discuss most of the questions at the end of the presentation. Looking at the handouts section of the GoToWebinar panel, please note also that a copy of the presentation is available for reference. With that, we will go ahead and turn things over to David Walker. Hello, David.
Good morning, everyone. Glad that you're to see such a good turnout. This is great, and looking forward to giving you a real nice quick webcast here about local-let DBE requirements, an update. And before I get started, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn just to give a brief overview of our division and her office of outreach.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending today. We're excited to see you, as David said, and share some news with you. I'm with the division, as we all are, with the Division of Small Business and External Workforce Development. That's our new name. For those of you who may not know, we changed our name in the spring here from the Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion Division. So if you're familiar with that, we now have a new name, Division of Small Business and External Workforce Development. And we have a new Deputy Director, Deborah Green. However, she's been with ODOT for 10 years or more. And we have a new administrator for our first office, of 3 offices. Delita Stoltz is administrator of the Office of Small Business Services. And as we did before, they handle the SBE and DBE, certification, the applications, they process those. They handle all of our DBE reporting requirements to the USDOT. They set all the DBE and EDGE goals on our projects and handle all the good faith efforts related to our projects as well. DBE supportive services, some of you who may be attending may have received those services. That's the DBE, so that's handled under the Small Business Services Office and on the job training as well. And our second of 3 offices is the Office of Contractor Compliance, led by KT LaPlace, administrator, and they handle all things related to prevailing wage, certified payroll, prompt payment, commercially useful function, or CUF, Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and ADA issues, and then Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Services Act. The third office, of which I'm administrator, is our Office of Outreach. So you may see us out and about at events here and there. But we are a liaison for those seeking to do business with ODOT, and we hold webinars, workshops, and events. Next slide, please. We have 4 regional outreach managers in our Office of Outreach, and they're stationed in each corner of the state. Michelle Newman handles districts 1, 2, and 3 in Northwest Ohio. Jennifer Christ handles districts 4, 11, and 12 in Northeast Ohio. Tony Perry Gillespie handles Southwest Ohio, ODOT districts 7, 8, and 9. And Lorraine Stevens is our Central and Southeast Ohio regional outreach manager, handling districts 5, 6, and 10. So at any time, please feel free to reach out to any of us. Everyone will get a copy of the PowerPoint if you have any questions, or we can be of assistance. So with that, I'll turn it back over to David. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. This is our standard disclaimer. We are doing this webinar for informational purposes only. So hopefully this won't be the case, but if anything in this webinar or on these slides would contradict what's in the federal bid doc template, the federal bid doc template prevails. Usually we say the proposal notes prevail, but since this is a local-let oriented presentation, it's everything that's in the federal bid doc template. That's what would be the legally binding. So we are not going to talk about the status of the DBE program so much right now, but what LPAs need to know is really the key here. And we'll talk a little bit about what bidders and primes need to know too, but we have the new DBE regulations that were effective in May 2024, and we have an opportunity to improve our program management and outcomes. So we're collecting more accurate DBE utilization data and using available technology better. So those are the main reasons why we're doing changes to the federal bid doc template with the proposal notes for DBE. So we've already started for ODOT-let, projects sold in the June 12th, 2025 letting or later are affected by these changes. Now, local-let, it would be any project advertised with a new federal bid doc template, but that federal bid doc template effective date is to be announced still. So we're a little bit ahead of the game here with doing this webinar. So just let people can be prepared. But again, I think Office of Local Programs will be communicating when this effective date of the federal bid doc template would be. So what's different for the local public agencies in this? Well, actually, there isn't a whole lot. Most of the changes affect the bidders and the primes. And if those bidders and primes are already working on ODOT-let projects, then they are going to be aware of those changes. But the new DBE affirmation form does look different from the old one. And in addition to the usual DBE utilization plan that is in FormStack, the bidders must submit their bidders list. And that's something that we are already doing on ODOT-let. So bidders list functionality, I don't have anything to show you right now on that, and we're still implementing that, but that will be a new requirement for we still say kind of may be rejected on the ODOT-let side, but technically it is a requirement that needs to be submitted with the bid. And the bidders list is basically just who is quoting. Each bidder submits like all the different subcontractors that have been shown expressed interest in working on the project, usually by submitting a quote. The ones that are ultimately going to be selected or not selected doesn't matter. They all have to be included. And it's just some basic information about them. It's DBE and non-DBE. Again, that's already in effect for ODOT-let. So for ODOT-let, we've done, well, for the industry, we've done these recent DBE webinars in, I think, June, and we had 3 parts. So the part 1, you can watch that, but it's oriented towards ODOT-let. And I will, in the next slide, talk about some of the changes that if you did watch that webinar, you would need to keep in mind from a local-let perspective. But if you're a prime and a DBE, you should watch part 2. And if you're a prime or a DBE material supplier, you should also watch part 3, because those are what is going to be in place for both ODOT-let and local-let once the federal, for the projects that have the new federal bid doc template. And now I will talk about just what's different about that local ODOT-let webinar part 1. There's just a few changes you would have to make. Not everywhere, but some cases you do replace just ODOT with LPA because they are locally administered projects. We don't have the same reporting that we do available for local-let. Eventually we'd like to, but for now, we don't do those status checkup emails like we do for ODOT-let. We don't have a summary of payment records of DBE commitments at this time. And then we're not doing the special PN013 contract amount for local-let. So we're just going to rely, that is, on the regular contract amount. So, I have all the slides in this presentation. If you download the slides from the handout area, then you can read them in more detail on your own. But again, as I said, I mean, this is going to be old news for most of the bidders and DBE primes and DBEs. This is more of informational purposes for the locals who may not have seen this already. But and this is just things that are in yellow are different. So I'm going to focus on those. We obviously, for the DBE process, DBEs send quotes to potential bidders, and material supplier DBEs will now have a material supplier form that they would submit. That's subject of part 3 recording that you can review. And of course, the forms are on our website. The bidder submits a DBE utilization plan and should be prepared to submit those DBE affirmation forms and GFE documentation if needed, if they are the apparent low bidder. That's really not changed, but what has changed is the forms themselves. And that's the subject of part 2 of the recording. So we are looking for just trying to encourage bidders to, when they enter their DBE utilization plans, to enter valid DBEs. Be very careful that you, as the bidder, have been very clear with the DBE how you're going to use them and for how much, so there's no confusion when they go to submit affirmations. You can always, of course, this is no change here, find certified firms on our website, click on Ohio Unified DBE Directory. If it's listed, you can use it, and you can see the NAICS codes. The NAICS codes are something that we are focusing on a lot more than we used to. Basically, for federal reporting purposes, we need to be much more clear with them about the different DBE NAICS codes that are being utilized on our projects. Of course, there's ways to find DBE participation. I'm not going to go through them there, but then does everything count towards the goal at 100%? Of course, subcontracting and consulting, trucking, yes. Anything DBE subs to a non-DBE does not count. And the new DBE affirmation form tries to make that much clearer than the old form. DBE supplies materials, then typically, no, those don't count towards the goal at 100%, but here are the different counting rates. And the new thing with the new DBE affirmation form, and this, again, wait until the new federal bid doc template is out, because this is in the new Proposal Note 7, 40% if the DBE is the distributor of the material. So that's a new category of material supply. It's not quite as high of a bar as the regular dealer category. So basically, that's why it's a lower percentage that it counts at. But also, one change is transportation costs are now counted, would be now counted at the same rate as the materials themselves. So where we used to count the transportation at 100%, now we're going to count that at the same rate as the materials. That does make things a little bit easier for everybody, but it does, it's easier to track, but maybe a little bit harder to meet those goals because of that. I have the definition of regular dealer here, so that's, just for the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all that. And then bulk and specialty, with the crossing out what being a bulk dealer means. Basically, you have to have a distribution equipment truck, and you can supply bulk items as a regular dealer without having a warehouse or a store. The distributor definition is, you just have to take ownership of the materials and ship them using a third-party carrier, unaffiliated with where you got the materials. You have to have the insurance. And importantly, there's any Office of Materials Management requirements need to be complied with. That goes for regular dealers and manufacturers as well. So definitely, here's an example of transportation costs, how that's being calculated. It's pretty straightforward. And we have the new DBE material supplier form. There's a link in the presentation, and that will help the bidders understand how the DBE material supplier will fulfill the order. It has to be submitted, and it's already happening on the ODOT-let projects. And it was discussed in much more detail in part 3 of the webinar, which was recorded. DBE utilization plan. There's one other thing that I needed to take out. I'm sorry. Just submit that with the bid in form stack, not the Ashdoor project bids, but in form stack. So actually, I can fix that, and we can send out a revised version. So due after the bid opening, the DBE affirmation forms and the GFE documentation. They were demonstrated in part 2 of the webinar. We do 5 days from the bid opening. Why wait? Just get them in as quickly as possible so you can have time to make corrections if needed. GFE documentation is needed if the total DBE participation does not meet the DBE contract goal, or if there's any downward adjustments needed due to, again, those like counting issues, or DBE doesn't have the right NAICS code, then GFE documentation would be needed. Only the ALB has to submit the GFE documentation, but the others might want to be ready to submit them in case we do reject the ALB's bid. And again, the downward adjustments to the utilization plan, those are some examples. I mentioned them briefly already. ODOT may require the LPA to reject the bid for the various reasons, kind of what we're currently doing now with the current practices. So important to make sure your entire team is aware of what you've committed to those DBEs on the project, because absent our consent, the awarded contractor is not entitled to any payment for work or material unless it is performed or supplied by that specific DBE on the affirmation form, utilization plan. And even if you haven't had any previous issues, this can still affect you. So just very important to make sure you don't self-perform anything that's been committed to a DBE, or if you reassign work from a DBE to a non-DBE, or even if you reassign work from one DBE to another. Those are all, those commitments that you've submitted are pretty much binding, so can't just make those changes without prior approval. Sub-agreement reviews, it's what's happening now, no change there. The twin goal attainment objectives are to attain the DBE contract goal, which increases or decreases based on the contract amount, and fully honor the DBE commitments. So it's not just saying, well, we met the goal, but we didn't use all the DBEs we were supposed to. The idea is to do both. Document everything that make any changes to the project may impact DBEs. Make sure that you can fully honor those commitments to the DBEs. Make sure you're aware of any reasons why you might not be able to. Keep a journal, and be watching for how you might have to remedy potential shortfalls. All changes, as I mentioned before, but this is new now. If the LPA does make a change to the project, the prime does not have to consent to that in advance of the change being made. But for all other changes to commitments, there is the same request for consent to terminate / reduce a DBE commitment form that is currently in place. So obviously the prime needs to not fire a DBE and then ask for consent to terminate, since it's already happened. And then again, can't stress this enough, don't self-perform activities you had committed to a DBE, the prime committed to a DBE, without getting that consent in advance. There are reasons for good cause, and I'm not going to go through them all, but the make a lot of sense, pretty much, if you read them. So what's not good cause is if, like saying, oh, we decided we could save time or money by self-performing the work, or oops, we made a mistake and self-performed the work. So it's just, as long as you've got your team aware of those DBE commitments, then you can avoid some of those areas of problems. If the LPA non-performs the DBE's work, again, the prime does not submit the request for consent form, but we do have to be made aware, the DBE needs to be made aware of that non-performance. Then we will adjust the commitment downward on our end. But we may have to verify the non-performance with the LPA project staff. If a DBE gets decertified, just as it is now, if it's decertified before the contract is signed with the prime, the DBE will not count. If the DBE signs the contract with the prime and then gets decertified, the DBE will count, but this is new in the regulation, unless that DBE merged with or was acquired by a non-DBE, in which case only the amount paid for work performed prior to the decertification will count. If it looks like the prime will not attain the goal, contract goal, start making and documenting GFEs to find additional DBE participation as soon as possible. You can use that good faith efforts form that we have on our website, but you don't need to submit it until the end of the project. Prime contractors are subject to sanction for failure to pay the DBE the dollar amount listed for the performance of those activities on the DBE affirmation form, failure to submit those change orders, or the request for consent to terminate / reduce, submission of inadequate GFE documentation. So the new DBE affirmation form that we're using has e-signatures using a product called OneSpan. So we're not asking, the new form is not something that is scanned and emailed, but it's just coming in through OneSpan electronically. And the test that we have right here is to make sure you can receive those OneSpan emails. Of course, if you've already been receiving them, you don't need to do this test. Probably if you've already been receiving them, it's because you submitted those requests for consent to reduce, and those are currently in OneSpan as well. So there's a link in the presentation that you can go to. There's instructions here, and all you're trying to do is make sure that you can receive the email, because sometimes those emails do go to people's junk or spam folders, and that's something that you might want to make sure that doesn't happen, because both the prime bidder, or the bidder on the project, and the parent low bidder, and the DBE will both have to sign the affirmation form electronically. So it's good for both of them to do that. Now, in the email that you get from OneSpan, just click the Go to Documents button. Make sure that you can get to that OneSpan sign website, and that's really the end. That's all you really have to do right now. So I realize I went through everything really quickly, but again, there really isn't too much. The vast majority of the changes are on the bidders and the primes, which they're already doing things on the ODOT-let side. So with that, I will definitely encourage people to put their questions in the chat. And I think that we had one about the bidders list.
David,
so yeah,
I will answer. So the bidders list is not currently being rolled out to local programs. We will adjust our presentation before the final gets sent out. So you can just disregard that for now. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. And as a reminder to our audience, You are welcome to submit questions into the questions box. And we do have question number 2 from Shauna. So let me send this to the panelists. There we go.
Okay. So the question is about what needs to be submitted on FormStack at bid time. That is not changing. It's the same FormStack form as it has been presently. And if you are a DBE material supplier, then you have to fill out the DBE material supplier form to inform the bidder of how the materials are going to count. Basically, so you answer questions as the material supplier, and the form then calculates for you how much will count towards what type of supply category, whether it's 100% from a manufacturer, 60% regular dealer, or 40%, or just the broker fee. And so if you are the prime, you don't really have to worry about how to fill that out, but you'll be receiving it, and you do need it when you're completing your DBE affirmation form. That DBE affirmation form is filled out in FormStack, but then finished in OneSpan. So I can definitely, if you have questions, about that, please reach out to me, and I can talk you through that more, or through to any of our goal attainment staff. But again, it's what's no different from what's currently happening on ODOT-let. So, okay, if the link doesn't work, I did test that before this, and it did work. I'm not sure if it's where you're clicking. If you're clicking on the screen right now during you're just clicking on the presentation, it's not going to work. You'll have to actually click in the handout. So hopefully the handout link works. Okay. So I think that's about it in terms of the questions at this point.
Okay, we have a question from Gail. Will we receive the presentation? Yes, we can email the presentation afterward. There's also a preliminary copy in the handout section right now in the GoToWebinar panel. Joe says, where do we find the current lists of projects coming out for bid?
I can take that question briefly. So for the local programs, typically local agencies will put their own projects out for bid. However, we do have a email listserv in which we send out upcoming projects and the goals that are attached to those. And I can make sure that we put that link on how to register for that in this PowerPoint before it goes out, and I would encourage anyone interested to subscribe to that. It comes out, I believe, every other week, and it includes the local projects.
Thank you.
Well, it has the goals, but doesn't have the dates. Sorry, yeah, it doesn't have those actual letting dates, so those vary. Unlike ODOT-let, where those will be known at the time we send that email out, they're not known necessarily for local let. So yes, you do have to make sure that you're following those local agencies' websites for that information if you're interested in bidding.
Okay, in the questions box, there are several questions saying the link in the handout is not working to get to the OneSpan. Can anybody in the panel drop the link into the chat that I can then send out to the attendees?
Yeah, I can do that. That's sort of an issue with sometimes the conversion process. Unfortunately, it seems like the links sometimes don't work. So yeah, I'll put that link in the chat. Oops.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And while you're doing that, among the panel, any other comments or items to share?
Just thanks to everyone for your time. I know we're right at 10:30. We scheduled a quick webcast, but there will be more information forthcoming. So just be on the lookout for the updated presentation and any additional details that we can share with you. Thank you. Have a great day.
And I just sent to the entire audience the link that David provided, and let's see if anyone can access the chat among the audience to see if that link is working now. Yes, it works. Thanks, Meg. Thanks, Natalie. We appreciate that. Okay, if there's any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to the team members listed there on the screen. And once again, we want to thank everyone for their participation today, and have a great day. Thanks.